Thank you, Selena. All right, all right. Yeah, I had to get a podium monkey rigged, as you guys can see. I'm not like some of our prestigious speakers who don't rely on any notes. You know, those guys that can speak from the heart and stuff. But if it makes any difference, y'all, these notes were written from the heart, so I hope that means something. All right. Well, let's get down to business. Okay, this is what I was thinking when they invited me to come and do the rally for common sense. These are the notes that I took down, and I'd like to share them with you, and I hope that they are well received. All right. Now, I've come to the conclusion that America means something different to everybody, to different degrees. Some people say, well, why can't we just forget about party and let's just all be Americans? Well, by what standard do we define America and freedom? By the Declaration of Independence in the Constitution? Okay. And by what standard do we interpret these documents? I promise I'm getting somewhere with this. Do I rely on a constitutional scholar? Obama's supposed to be a constitutional scholar, but his thoughts on the Constitution is that it needs a fabulous makeover. Nice. For example, let's ignore the free religious exercise of the church. Force the church to put man's selfish laws before God's righteous laws. Y'all, the church not joining same-sex couples in marriage is not a violation of their God-given rights protected in the Constitution. One, the church not joining same-sex couples in marriage doesn't deprive them of their right to life. Two, some would say it deprives them of liberty, but it's not the church denying them of liberty. It's the selfish trying to deny the church of their religious liberty.
Amen. Don't tell it.
The Constitution speaks of religious liberty. It doesn't speak of taking the liberty to force a church to accept man's law over God's. Three, some may say that not joining same-sex couples in marriage denies them of their pursuit of happiness. True, but the problem with their happy pursuits is that another party would be forced into forfeiting their happiness as well as their right to free religious exercise. In short, this is what liberalism means. Liberals grossly misunderstand the Constitution and freedom as they don't understand, or they're just too selfish to care, that the freedoms that they want come at the high, involuntary expense of others. And that's just not how freedom works. A lot of people out there calling themselves Republicans tell conservative Republicans that Republicans need to stay away from the social issues, which means throw God, the unborn, and traditional marriage under the bus. Great strategy. It's done us a world of good, hasn't it? I thought we didn't like cutting and running. I thought we didn't like burying our heads in the sand. But the very things that are ripping the fabric of our nation are the things we're supposed to ignore. We're supposed to just focus on the economy. Republicans have allowed liberals to drag them into a wrestling match over the economy. And while they've got Republicans tied up with economic issues, liberals are forwarding their social issues. Y'all may be thinking, surely liberals are going to see that Obama has failed on his liberal economic policy. No, they're going to see that he's failed at being more aggressive. They want him to be more forceful with it. Anyway, as I was saying about Obama, who reads the Constitution as if it were upside down and backwards, he would be a good example of why I don't measure constitutional interpretation by a person, but rather by the one who grants us our inalienable rights in the first place. That would be God. But some people don't believe our founding documents are set upon a Judeo-Christian foundation. They take for granted that more than any country in history, God's word has been the basis of the friendliest environment for different faiths and even the faithless. Though I am a conservative Republican, where I begin with defining America doesn't start with a party, the founding fathers, or the founding documents. It starts with God. For the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, and I don't claim to know squat about America or freedom without processing it through God first. With that, I understand that we enjoy a constitutional republic. Thus, I am a Republican. Abraham Lincoln got it. Liberals try to lay some sort of claim on Lincoln by saying that he was a liberal. Wrong. Lincoln was a liberator, not a liberal. He was a conservative, beset on conserving our republic from the Democrats' perversion and erosion of it. See, Democrats were very liberal with their interpretation of the Constitution, just as they are today. Excuse me. And when you take such liberties when interpreting the Constitution, it leads to legalizing the imposition of selfishness onto others. Liberal interpretation of the Constitution tells one group of people that they can make another group of people their property and enslave them. This is the legacy of the Democrat Party. And Lincoln's position was, look, man, I don't see where it says you can force people into being your property. You're being very liberal with your interpretation of this thing. I think we need to be conservative when interpreting the Constitution, so as to not make it legal to forcibly deprive life, liberty, happy pursuits, and property from one group for the supposed prosperity and comforts of another. You dig? Liberal interpretation of the Constitution legalizes abortion and makes it legal for the government to make you pay for someone else's. See what happens when we avoid social issues? Now, just as the Democrats' liberal interpretation made the far-reaching argument that some people don't qualify as human and made them slaves, they also disqualified the personhood of the child in the womb. A conservative interpretation sees that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. These God-given rights, spelled out in the Declaration of Independence, are protected with the U.S. Constitution. But notice, the D of I doesn't say all men are equal. It doesn't even say all men are born equal. It says created equal, which means our God-given rights, the first of which is life, begins upon being created. None of us are truly born equal, and we don't all perform equally. The one thing that establishes our equality, the one event that we all share and have in common, is God's design of procreation, and that's the marriage of the male seed to the female egg. There you go. That's when you're created, and that's when your God-given rights begin. Amen. And according to the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, nobody can be deprived of said rights without due process of law. What did the fetus do to break the law? Exactly, nothing. So how does a child in the womb get the death penalty for someone else's indiscretion? By taking liberties with the Constitution or just flat out ignoring it. That's how. Conservative interpretation protects the rights that God blessed you with the moment you were created. The word created wasn't a fluke choice of words.
Don't say fluke.
The founding fathers knew about tyrants who would take liberties with their power and have children cut from their mothers' bellies as if the fetus never had a right to live. And liberal Democrats are still taking those same liberties today. Also, liberal interpretation has imposed us with income taxes, when the Constitution doesn't even have general income taxes in its model. It does say that Congress can collect excises, imposts, duties to pay the debts and provide for the common defense and promote the general welfare. But to a conservative, the general welfare of the United States has a lot to do with how well she's defended. Peace and freedom are among God's most valuable gifts next to life itself. And some people have a pretty nasty habit of trying to steal or destroy things of value. Thus, they always have to be defended. And Godspeed to our military for volunteering to do so. Where my vets at? Liberal interpretation takes liberties in assuming that providing for the general welfare means the government's job is to provide housing, food, health care, etc. Wrong.
Life's in the living, not the giving.
The welfare of this country is in making sure that freedom is defended so that we may conduct our own happy pursuits. And even if the Constitution was talking about the liberal interpretation of welfare, it doesn't suggest we tax someone else's income to do it. The founding fathers didn't want the government funded by income taxes because they knew that the government would bleed the people dry and the country would go broke.
Amen.
And they would use the poor as a means to do it, and the poor would be their loyal voter stock to give them the power to do so.
Right.
I can see that the income tax wasn't initially in the model because it was added in the 16th Amendment under the guise of clarification. The 16th Amendment is in conflict with our Constitution as income taxes violate our right to property. And I really hope this resonates with y'all and that we will move to get the 16th Amendment abolished.
Yeah.
But as it stands, the liberal view of America is that it's a free country and everything should be exactly that, free. Whether it was slavery, entitlements, benefits, or abortion, liberals always want their desires facilitated at the high expense of others. Democrats wanted their desires met with forced free labor, and they got so angry about Republicans abolishing slavery that the Democrats formed the Ku Klux Klan. This is how far the entitlement mindset of Democrats go. By the way, these were never conservative Democrats. They bastardized the term conservative in the sense that they wanted to conserve the white race. So Democrats use things like segregation, eugenics, and anti-miscegenation laws. This is the legacy of the Democrat Party, but they were not conservative. The true meaning of conservative is the maintaining of our God-given rights for every American. And we have to let the non-white Democrat voters know that all the racism that they've been so angry about has been institutionalized by the Democrat Party. See, y'all, this is why I was pulling for Dr. Keyes several years ago.
Yes.
One,
Opportunity lost.
because he's a strong conservative man of God. But also because the Democrats would have to have shown their true bigoted colors to tear him down, and all we'd have to do is just sit back and hold up a mirror.
Right.
Some would have had an awakening. They would have seen where the real racism comes from and would have been more receptive when we tell them that the true racist history of America lies with the Democrat Party. This would take the stigma off of Republicans and opens people up to conservative ideas. Many of y'all have heard that many non-whites are actually pretty conservative. Here's the problem. They're not going to allow themselves to go along with actual conservatives because they don't want to be associated with supposed racist white folks.
Right.
Same reason why I supported Herman Cain.
Woo!
Strong conservative man of God. And with him, we'd run the same strategy. We would have drawn the left out to expose who they are. Conservatives, you have to nuke the cultural narrative before you can effectively maintain a political victory. And until we do, liberals are going to keep dragging us into being the kind of country others risk their lives to leave.
Right.
Yet they call America oppressive while nobody forces them to stay here.
Right. Tell me. Tell me.
And it doesn't look like any of these sniveling liberals are trying to flee America for the greener pastures of a socialistic or communistic country floating over in Cuba on a raft with a sail that has a big picture of Che Guevara on it.
Go! Go!
As conservatives, we understand that immigration is a big part of making America the great country that it is. I always say as Americans, we're not better than everybody else. We are everybody else.
I like that.
But liberals patronize illegal immigrants to make them a voting stock. And those illegal immigrants will vote in the same kind of government they just ran from. It's illegal immigration we dislike, not immigration or immigrants. I don't even know why that needs explaining.
Right. Amen.
These people yell at us. Yell at your own country. They're the ones screwing you over. Oh, I forgot. You can get killed for speaking out against your government. Yeah, we're oppressive here in America. If left-wingers keep getting their way, they'll end up with the America they're afraid of.
Right.
And they'll long for those Second Amendment rights that protected things like that First Amendment right they claim to love so much for themselves, of course. So, in closing, since we have differing views of what America is, we align with others who share more of what our idea of America is. If you're for one nation under God and understand that this is a constitutional republic, then you may find yourself in the conservative Republican tent. And by the way, I'm a Republican because of the platform.
And I don't feel the need to stop being one because of the others who fail to represent what it is to be a Republican and be rhinos. We form a party to hold the line against a legion of selfish people hell-bent on giving the government the power to tax and spend us into the ground. Y'all, it's either their version of America or it's ours. Thank you for letting me share my thoughts with you. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.